Moscow, Russia, pre-tour September 5th and 6th, 2019. This journey starts at the Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam with this incredible arrangement of sunflower pots to greet you as you arrive at the airport. I get my ticket and find a gate location marquee. On the marquee is this saying in Dutch, which means have a nice trip. I find out which gate is mine for my KLM flight to Moscow. After arriving at my gate, it is not long before I'm on the plane and headed for Moscow. Certainly a bucket lister. Donna and Ray are seated pretty close by. It's about a 3.5-hour flight to the Moscow Sheremetyevo Airport, named after a small village. It became a civilian airport back in 1959 and now the largest in Russia. And as of 2019, the official name of the airport is now the Sheremetyevo Alexander Pushkin Airport. It was a bit of a wait while everybody processed through a somewhat more obnoxious immigration process than normal and get our luggage. We head outside eventually and wait for our transportation, which arrives to take us into Moscow. Just a few months before we arrived here in Moscow, there was a contest to name airports after famous Russian individuals. And not only was Alexander Pushkin a favorite son, but he was also born in Moscow. So naming the airport after Alexander Pushkin was an easy process. Leaving the airport and headed into Moscow. We take the M11 and the M10 towards Moscow, entering the city on the Leningradsky Prospect Highway. With no traffic, it is only about a 45-minute ride from the airport, but we had traffic and it was almost 2 hours. However, we eventually made it. Our drivers seem to like American music. We arrive at the hotel and Victor had things pretty well set up, so it didn't take us long to get to our rooms. Pretty quickly after checking in, Ray, Donna, and I took off for dinner at a restaurant that Victor recommended, which was only a few blocks away. My first experience at wandering around Moscow. Tverskaya Ulitsa is the main road from the hotel, which leads down to the Kremlin and Red Square. We approach the very popular Alexander Pushkin Square and turn left, looking for the street our restaurant is on. We had a few blocks in that direction, and then we turned to try and find our restaurant in the back streets somewhere. In finding the restaurant, it was an interesting walk, passing several very impressive buildings and streets. Once we found it, even then it was hidden back off the main street, but it turned out to be a wonderful Russian culinary experience. Good evening. Upon arriving, Ray and I got a nice lager, which was a welcome treat after a long day of travel. And then for an appetizer, Ray and Donna ordered some tartare, which was new to me and really delicious.
Okay. And this is beef tartare.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks great.
Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise. I'm sorry, my English.
Don't worry about it.
Well, we pronounce it in different ways here.
It's our fault.
And for dinner, we had a tasty dish of wild halibut in crispy dough, and also halibut and cauliflower. Our waiter was nice enough to write out how you pronounce thank you in Russian, and this is how you spell it in Russian. Spasiba.
If you're not too tired.
Okay, thank you.
After a delicious dinner, we decide to head back to the hotel, taking the long way around, which takes us close to the Kremlin and Red Square. Along the way, we continue to see beautiful buildings with most of them nicely lit up with colored lights. And then we pass the very impressive Bolshoi Theater. Even more impressive are the light decorations hung along pedestrian walkways and closed streets, which are there for the big weekend celebration of the birthday of Moscow, now 872 years old. This is my first glimpse of the Kremlin and Red Square. Red Square is actually on the back side of the State Historical Museum, and the Kremlin is identifiable by these towers: the corner Arsenal Tower, the middle Arsenal Tower, and the Trinity Tower. This is the State Historical Museum, behind which is Red Square. They have completely shut down the main road into Red Square and the Kremlin, and are building kiosks, display stands, performance platforms, and public participation activities and games. It looks like they will have a long night. We come back by Alexander Pushkin Square on our way back to the hotel. We are tired and ready for some rest. Today was a long day of travel, and tomorrow will be a big day of exploring. Friday, September the 6th. Having flown in a day early to Moscow before the start of the organized tour, I have a free day to explore on my own. Once again, I walk down the main thoroughfare of Moscow, Tverskaya Ulitsa. It has been the main road here since medieval times. As I approach Pushkin Square, again, it is a much easier process to cross the very busy road by using the underground, a convenience that most of Europe also has. There are loads of shops selling just about everything you might want, and these underground walkways are usually an access to the underground metro train system. I exit on the other side of Pushkin Square, just where they have shut down the main road to Red Square, and they are still hard at work building the platforms to be used for the Moscow birthday celebration. At the end of Tverskaya Ulitsa, and just before Red Square in the Kremlin, is the Manesnaya Square, which for the Moscow birthday celebration, they have dressed up more than normal with some incredible floral displays. And now, to start in earnest my exploration of Red Square and the Kremlin. After passing through Manezhnaya Square, I am in front of the State History Museum, where there is a statue of Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the most significant and famous military commander during the Second World War. This is the Kremlin Corner Arsenal Tower, and from here I walk up this street called Kremlinsky Drive, which is between the Kremlin wall and the State History Museum to the Red Square. I'm not sure who Kremlinsky was, but there's a famous Russian vodka by that name. And now I enter Red Square. Pretty impressive. Upon entering the square, I walk across the square. On the north side of the square is the State History Museum, which is next to the CUISINE Cathedral. I continue through Red Square, passing GUM, a huge and very popular shopping center. The bell chimes you can hear are coming from the bell of the Spasskaya, or Savior Tower, and Lenin's mausoleum is in the middle of Red Square. Next is the Savior's Tower. The Savior's Tower, or the Spasskaya Tower, has been the official entrance to the Kremlin for centuries. Built in 1491 and named Savior's Tower in 1658 when the icon of the Savior was placed on the tower facing Red Square. The chimes which come from this tower are actually quite famous. Next I head just across the square from there to the incredibly beautiful and unbelievably impressive St. Basil's Cathedral with its ornate and colorful onion-shaped domes. From St. Basil's, I took a short detour up to the Bolshoi-Moskva-Voretsky Bridge, which crosses the Moscow or the Moskva River. It was upon this bridge that the opposition leader, Boris Nemtsov, was gunned down in 2015, 2 days before he was to lead a protest march against the Russian government and Putin. From the bridge, there was a nice view of the Kotel Nichayskaya embankment building, one of 7 Stalinist-style skyscrapers in Moscow. Back to the Kremlin. There are 7 towers along the south wall of the Kremlin. They have had different functions over the centuries, but today are just adornments to the wall with no other significant function. Some of the structures that exist inside the Kremlin that I will see while walking along the south wall are Nameless Tower Number 1, Ivan the Great Bell Tower, Archangel's Cathedral, Cathedral of the Assumption, Grand Kremlin Palace, and the Water Tower. The tower I'm approaching here is one of the Nameless Towers. This is Nameless Tower Number 1 and the top of Ivan the Great Bell Tower inside the Kremlin. These are some of the photos of the structures I was able to get photos of while walking the south wall. There is the Archangel's Cathedral to the left and another glimpse of the top of the Ivan the Great Bell Tower. Next is the Assumption Cathedral, and finally a nice shot of the Grand Kremlin Palace on the other side of the wall. I am now approaching the end of the southern wall of the Kremlin, and this is the water supplying tower, which in the 1600s, water for the Kremlin was drawn from the Moscow River through this tower, which is no longer the case. Just a beautiful tower. From there, I walked around to the northwest portion of the Kremlin and the Borovitskaya Tower, so named because in the time before the tower was built, about 800 years ago, this hill was covered with a forest, and the word for forest in Russian is Bor. And this is the Grand Palace access gate. Also across the street in Borovitskaya Square is a very large monument dedicated to Holy Great Prince Vladimir, or Vladimir the Great, ruling from 980 to 1015. He has a long and very interesting story, too long for here, but suffice to say that he was a great warrior and conquered many countries, and also significance of the cross he holds. He is the one that brought the Christian religion to Russia. I am now headed back to Red Square, walking alongside the north wall of the Kremlin, where this park, Alexandrovsky Garden, is. The garden was built as part of a restoration of the city after the Napoleonic Wars and was originally called the Kremlin Garden. but was later dedicated to Alexander I, who defeated Napoleon. Now on my way along the north side of the Kremlin, and on the way past the garden and headed to lunch in the Red Square, I passed this very colorful water pool, which is just outside the 4 floors below ground Menage shopping center. It was very crowded, and this needs no explanation. However, I was in search of Russian cuisine, and so I continued back to Red Square and found this nice restaurant right on the square. It turned out to be a perfect restaurant with good food, a spectacular view, and cold beer. I started with a nice cold beer, Russian beer, to celebrate the day. From where I was sitting, I could see the Lenin Mausoleum across the square. It was a wonderful spot for people watching, and even a military band passed by. And in Russian, to your health, Vash Zdrovya. When my waiter arrived, he recommended this dish, a potato wedge and mushroom dish. So that is what I ordered. I was told by Nikita, my waiter, that this is a traditional Russian peasant-made dish of onions, mushrooms, and potato slices. It was really tasty, and since returning home, I have tried to make it myself. Mine is not nearly as good, but it is almost an indestructible dish, and no matter how I cook it, it still comes out pretty good. I thanked him for the suggestion and then asked him what his name was. He then described his childhood experience with his parents in preparing this dish.
Sorry, thank you very much. What's your name?
Nikita.
Nikita.
Like Khrushchev.
Yeah.
But not Khrushchev.
Yeah.
In the morning, I went with my father and mother to the forest and cut some mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. After my mother, it's cooked with potato and just fried on the pan with potatoes.
And that's that same thing.
Before I left to head back to the hotel, I had to go to the restroom. Pretty fancy. On the inside also. I was done. Time to head back, leaving Red Square. As I start my walk back to the hotel, I have one more significant structure to see, and it is on the way. From hundreds of years ago, when Red Square was cordoned off and you could only enter through a gate, there is only one gate remaining, and this one is so named Resurrection Gate, because of the icon of the resurrection which is on the gate facing Red Square. I head through the gate back towards Manezhnaya Square, where they have the beautiful display of flowers. Before getting too far away from the gate, I turned around and got a couple of photos of the Resurrection Gate, and to my mind, one of the more memorable photos, which is a photo of St. Basil's Cathedral through the gate. Afterwards, I once again passed the monument of Georgy Zhukov, the World War II Russian hero. On my way, as I head back, I go through the display of flowers and take a few photos of this wonderful floral exhibit. Then back through the underground to get to the other side of the street. The street is blocked off due to the construction related to the Moscow birthday celebration. Coming up above ground, I'm now headed back up Tverskaya Ulitsa, leaving Red Square with the construction still taking place and making progress. I head back to the hotel, and on the way I decide, not knowing yet that we will be getting a metro tour in a couple of days, but I decide to take a ride on the metro. So I head for the metro station just beyond the hotel. And just outside the metro entrance, they have an awesome set of swings that I had to get a video of. After enjoying the sight of people swinging, it was time for the metro. Not sure how this is going to work, but here goes. Into the station and purchase a ticket or whatever is required, sometimes a token. I'm soon headed down to the tracks, and the ride down is pretty far, surprisingly far. I found the metro stations quite well kept and rather beautiful. My train is arriving, and I am about to have my first of what will eventually be quite a few metro train rides in Russia. I only go a few stops, so I am quickly, soon off the train and back down to the Red Square area. The stop is actually the Theater District stop. This is the exit sign. Red Square, Kremlin, Menasnaya Square, the State History Museum, and the Revolution Plaza. I exit the station into Revolution Plaza. And right around the corner is the Bolshoi Theater. Such a beautiful building. Back on Tverskaya Ulitsa, and the construction continues at a torrid pace, including setting up this replica of the famous sculpture Worker and Kolkhoz Woman, representing Soviet socialist symbolism. At that point I returned to the hotel, and that evening Victor had a meet and greet for those on the tour. Tomorrow morning we start the organized tour of Moscow. See next video. The end of the pre-tour portion of my visit to Moscow. Video produced by Fred Perry.